I gave away my apartment to a stranger because I thought I'd lost everything that mattered. But when I opened that door 6 months later, I found my missing mother sitting at my kitchen table, holding someone else's baby, with no idea who I was. Welcome to Stories by Jason. If you're settled in and ready for a good story, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another exciting story coming your way tomorrow, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you so much for the love and support. You're truly appreciated, and I'm so grateful to have you here with me. The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble fireplace, sending shards across the Persian rug like frozen tears. Altha Vance stood in the center of her mother's penthouse living room, chest heaving, fists clenched so tight her manicured nails drew blood from her palms. 38 years, Beatrice Vance said, her voice cold as winter steel. 38 years I've sacrificed for you, and this is how you repay me, by throwing away everything your father built. Everything Dad built. Altha's laugh was bitter, sharp enough to cut. You mean everything I've killed myself to maintain while you micromanaged every breath I took, every decision I made, every relationship I ever tried to have. The older woman's face was a mask of aristocratic fury, her silver hair pulled back so severely it seemed to stretch her skin. Those relationships would have destroyed you. That artist who wanted to find himself in Nepal. That professor with 2 ex-wives and a gambling problem. I protected you from your own weakness. Weakness? Altha's voice cracked. I was in love, Mother, I was happy. And you crushed it every single time because it didn't fit your vision of who I should be. The perfect CEO daughter, the perfect extension of your control. Beatrice's hand flew across the space between them, the slap echoing through the room like a gunshot. Altha's head snapped to the side, her cheek blooming red. For a moment, neither woman moved. They'd argued before, countless times over the decades, but never like this. Never with violence. Get out, Beatrice whispered, her hand trembling as she lowered it. Get out of my house. Altha touched her burning cheek, tasting blood where her teeth had cut the inside of her mouth. When she looked at her mother, she saw something she'd never seen before. Fear. Not anger, not disappointment. Fear. You know what the worst part is, Altha said quietly. I actually did it all for you. Every sacrifice. Every lonely night. Every time I walked away from someone who loved me because you convinced me the company was more important. I chose you over everything, and I still hate you for it. She turned toward the door, grabbing her coat from the rack. Altha, I wish I'd never been born your daughter. The door slammed behind her and Altha stood in the hallway, her whole body shaking. The words hung in the air like poison, and she wanted to take them back immediately. But pride, that Vance family trait that ran deeper than blood, kept her moving toward the elevator. She didn't look back. That was Monday, April 15th, at 7:43 p.m. It was the last time Altha Vance would see her mother as the woman she'd known her entire life. 3 days later, Altha's phone rang at 6:00 a.m. Ms. Vance, the voice was professional, detached. This is Detective Morrison with the NYPD. Your mother was reported missing by her housekeeper yesterday evening. We need you to come down to the station. The coffee cup slipped from Altha's hand, brown liquid spreading across her white kitchen counter like a stain she couldn't wash away. Missing? What do you mean missing? Her bed wasn't slept in Wednesday night. Her car is still in the garage. Her phone and purse are on her dresser. The housekeeper, Ms. Chen, says she hasn't seen or heard from her since Wednesday afternoon. Given the circumstances, we're treating this as a potential emergency. Altha's apartment spun. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The police station smelled like burnt coffee and bureaucratic indifference. Detective Morrison was a tired-looking man in his 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much. When did you last speak with your mother? He asked, pen poised over his notepad. Monday night, we had an argument. What kind of argument? Altha's throat constricted. A bad one. I said things I shouldn't have said. The detective's expression softened slightly. Ms. Vance, I need you to tell me everything. Family arguments can be relevant in missing persons cases. So she told him. About the fight. About the slap. About the last words she'd spoken to her mother. With each confession, she felt herself shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller until she was nothing but guilt and regret wearing expensive clothes. Has your mother ever disappeared before? Any history of mental health issues? Substance abuse? No, never. She's controlled, rigid. She plans everything down to the minute. This isn't like her at all. Any enemies, business rivals, anyone who might want to harm her? Altha thought of the corporate world they'd navigated together, the hostile takeovers, the boardroom battles, the competitors they'd crushed. In business, dozens, but to actually hurt her, I can't imagine. Morrison nodded, making notes. We'll check hospitals, hotels, transit stations, pull traffic camera footage, interview neighbors and business associates. In the meantime, I need you to provide recent photos, her medical information, and a list of places she frequents. That's it, you're just making lists. Ms. Vance, in my experience, most missing persons return within 48 hours. Usually, there's a simple explanation. A spontaneous trip. A desire for space after a family conflict. We'll find her. But his eyes told a different story. His eyes said that women like Beatrice Vance, wealthy, meticulous, creatures of habit, didn't just disappear. Altha hired a private investigator that same afternoon. Marcus Webb was ex-FBI, highly recommended, and expensive enough to take her seriously. I'll be straight with you, he said during their first meeting. The first 72 hours are critical. After that, the trail gets cold fast. I'll need access to her financial records, phone records, security footage from her building. I'll interview everyone in her life. But Ms. Vance, Altha, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that we might not find what you're hoping to find. Just find her, Altha said, whatever it costs. 4 days became a week became 2. Altha barely slept, barely ate. She called her mother's phone obsessively, listening to the voicemail greeting over and over. You've reached Beatrice Vance. I'm unable to take your call. Leave a message. Each time, she heard that cold, controlled voice and wanted to scream. The police found nothing. Webb found nothing. It was as if Beatrice Vance had simply evaporated into the spring air, leaving behind only questions and the echo of their last terrible conversation. On day 16, Altha sat in her apartment, the lake house property she'd bought as an escape from her mother's penthouse world, and stared at her reflection in the darkened window. She looked like a ghost, hollow, haunted. Her phone buzzed. A text from David Chen, the company's CFO, board meeting moved to Monday. Tokyo deal closing next week. Need you there, this can't wait. The Tokyo deal. 6 months of negotiations with Yamamoto Industries. Hundreds of millions of dollars. The future of Vance Holdings, her father's legacy. And she couldn't bring herself to care. But she had to go. The company employed thousands of people. Her mother had built this empire alongside her father, and Altha had sacrificed everything to maintain it. She couldn't let it crumble now, even as her own world fell apart. She booked a flight to Tokyo for the next morning. She packed a single suitcase. And she tried not to think about the fact that she was leaving while her mother was still missing, still lost, still possibly calling out for her somewhere in the darkness. LaGuardia Airport was a cacophony of humanity, crying children, barking gate agents, the endless scroll of departure times clicking across screens like mechanical heartbeats. Altha moved through it all in a fog, her carry-on dragging behind her like the weight of her guilt made physical. She'd spent the night before on the phone with Webb, listening to his latest update. Nothing. The credit cards hadn't been used, the bank accounts untouched. Security footage from surrounding buildings showed nothing unusual. Beatrice Vance had simply ceased to exist. Sometimes people don't want to be found, Webb had said gently. Not her, Altha had insisted. You don't know her, control is everything to her, she wouldn't just leave. Unless Altha had finally broken her. Unless those last words, I wish I'd never been born your daughter, had shattered something fundamental in that iron-willed woman. Gate 27, Tokyo via Los Angeles, boarding in 45 minutes. Altha found a seat near the window and pulled out her laptop, trying to focus on the presentation slides she'd reviewed 100 times. Revenue projections, market analysis, strategic synergies. The words blurred together, meaningless. She was about to close the laptop when she heard it, a baby crying. Not the usual fussy infant sounds that filled airports, but the raw, desperate wail of a child in genuine distress. Altha looked up. Near the charging station, partially hidden behind a support pillar, sat a young woman who couldn't have been more than 25. She was holding a baby, maybe 6 months old, and rocking back and forth in a rhythmic motion that spoke of exhaustion. The woman's clothes were dirty, layers of mismatched fabrics that hung loose on her thin frame. Her blonde hair was matted, her face smudged with grime. A torn backpack and a garbage bag full of belongings sat at her feet. Homeless, clearly, obviously homeless, and somehow she'd made it into the terminal. The baby's cries intensified and the young woman bent over him, whispering frantically. Altha could see tears streaming down her face. "Ma'am, you need to move along." A security guard had appeared, his hand on his radio. "This is a restricted area, if you don't have a boarding pass." "Please," the woman begged. "Please, my baby is hungry, I just need a few more minutes. I'm trying to feed him but I don't have. I lost my formula and—" "You need to leave now, or I'll have to escort you out." Something inside Altha snapped. She stood up, laptop forgotten, and walked directly to the security guard. "She's with me." The guard turned, taking in Altha's expensive suit, her designer carry-on, the unmistakable air of authority that came from years of commanding boardrooms. "Ma'am." "I said she's with me. Is there a problem?" The guard looked between them, clearly skeptical. "This woman was found sleeping in the bathroom yesterday. She's been—" "I don't care where she was yesterday. Today, she's my guest. Is that going to be an issue?" The guard's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. "No issue, just keep the noise down." He walked away, muttering into his radio. Altha turned to the young woman, who was staring at her with wide, disbelieving eyes. Up close, Altha could see she was actually beautiful beneath the dirt and exhaustion. High cheekbones, clear blue eyes, a delicate bone structure that spoke of better days. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "Thank you so much, I just needed, he's so hungry and I—" "What's your name?" "Sienna, and this is Leo." She adjusted the baby in her arms, and Altha saw that beneath the blanket, the infant was alarmingly thin. "When did you last eat, Sienna?" The woman's face crumpled. "I don't. Yesterday, the day before. A woman gave me half a sandwich near Port Authority, but Leo needs formula and it's so expensive and every shelter is full and—" Her words dissolved into sobs. Altha pulled out her wallet, extracting several $100s in cash. "Here, get formula, get food, get whatever you need." Sienna stared at the money like it was a miracle. "I can't, this is too much." "Why would you?" "Because someone needs to." The words came out harsher than Altha intended. She softened her voice. "Take it, please." But even as Sienna clutched the bills with shaking hands, Altha knew it wasn't enough. Money wouldn't solve the fundamental problem. This woman and her baby had nowhere to go, and in a few hours, Altha would be on a plane to Tokyo, and Sienna would be back out on the streets, and the cycle would continue until something terrible happened. An idea formed. Insane, impulsive, completely unlike anything Altha Vance would normally do. "Sienna, do you have family? Anyone who can help you?" The young woman shook her head. "My parents kicked me out when I got pregnant. Leo's father. He left before Leo was born. I've been trying to get into subsidized housing, but the waiting lists are years long. I had a job, but I couldn't afford childcare and they fired me for bringing Leo to work. Everything just fell apart." Altha thought of her lake house apartment. 2 bedrooms, fully furnished, sitting empty while she chased her mother's ghost across the city and prepared to fly to Tokyo to close a deal she didn't care about anymore. Her mother was gone. The company could survive without her for a few months, but this woman and this baby wouldn't survive another week on the streets. "I have an apartment," Altha heard herself say. "Near Riverside Park, it's empty. I'm going to be out of the country for an extended period. You can stay there." Sienna's eyes went impossibly wider. What? No, I can't accept." "You can and you will." Altha was already pulling out her keys, removing the apartment key from the ring. "The address is on this card. The building has a doorman. His name is Marcus. Tell him Altha Vance sent you. There's food in the fridge, formula in the pantry from when my friend visited with her daughter last month. Clean clothes in the dresser. Everything you need." "But why would you? We're complete strangers. You don't know me. I could be." You could be a lot of things, Alpha said quietly. But right now, you're a mother trying to keep her baby alive. That's all I need to know. She pressed the key and her business card into Sienna's palm. There's only one condition. You have to take care of yourself and Leo. Really take care of yourselves. Use the apartment to get back on your feet. I'll be gone at least 6 months, maybe longer. When I come back, we'll figure out the next steps. Deal. Sienna was crying again, but these were different tears. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? Alpha thought of her mother, missing for 16 days. She thought of all the times she'd been too busy, too focused on the company, too wrapped up in her own controlled existence to show basic human kindness. She thought of the last words she'd said, the ones that might be the last words her mother ever heard from her. Because I didn't do it when it mattered most, Alpha whispered. And I need to know that someone somewhere is getting the help they needed before it's too late. She stood up, gathering her laptop and carry-on. Her flight was boarding. The apartment is yours, Sienna. Make it a home. Give Leo the life he deserves. She paused, looking down at the young woman and her baby, two strangers who would never know they'd become her redemption in this moment. And if anyone asks, tell them Alpha Vance believes in second chances. She walked toward her gate without looking back. Behind her, Sienna held the key like a lifeline and whispered to her sleeping son, "We're going to be okay, baby. We're finally going to be okay." Neither woman knew that this single moment of desperate kindness would weave their lives together in ways neither could possibly imagine. Tokyo was a blur of neon and negotiation. Alpha threw herself into the Yamamoto deal with the focused intensity of someone trying to outrun their own thoughts. 18-hour days, back-to-back meetings, presentations delivered in conference rooms that overlooked the glittering cityscape while her mind wandered to dark New York streets where her mother might be cold, hurt, afraid. The deal closed in 3 weeks. Yamamoto Industries became a subsidiary of Vance Holdings. The board was ecstatic. The stock price soared. Alpha felt nothing. She should have gone home, should have been there to keep searching to answer if her mother somehow found a way to call. But David Chen was already setting up meetings in Singapore, then Hong Kong, then Sydney. The company needed her, and she'd spent her entire life believing that need superseded everything else. So she stayed. 6 months became her exile and her penance. She called Detective Morrison every week. Any news? I'm sorry, Ms. Vance. The case is still open but without new leads. She called Webb every 3 days. Anything? I've exhausted every avenue. I'm sorry, Alpha. At this point, we're looking at a cold case. She stood in hotel rooms across Asia and Oceania, looking at her reflection in floor-to-ceiling windows, and saw a stranger. Success had made her hollow. Her mother's disappearance had made her desperate. And somewhere in a small apartment in New York, a homeless woman she'd helped in a moment of grief was living the life Alpha had given away. She'd called the building's doorman, Marcus, once in the first month. How is she, the woman I sent? Miss Sienna, she's wonderful, Miss Vance. Very quiet, very respectful. The baby is adorable. She's even started working part-time at the coffee shop on the corner, brings little Leo in a carrier. Everyone in the building loves them. Alpha had hung up and cried for the first time since her mother disappeared. Cried because a stranger was making a home in her apartment. Cried because she was glad. Cried because she was alone in a Singapore hotel room at 3 a.m., and her mother was still missing, and she'd become exactly what Beatrice had always feared. A woman who'd chosen everything except the things that actually mattered. The call came on a Wednesday in October, 6 months and 2 days after she'd given Sienna her key. Ms. Vance, it was Marcus, the doorman. His voice was strange, strained. I think you need to come home. It's about your apartment. Alpha's heart stopped. Is Sienna okay? Is the baby? They're fine, everyone's fine, but theirs. You need to see this yourself. I can't explain over the phone. Marcus, tell me what's going on. Please, Ms. Vance, just come home. She booked a flight that left Sydney at midnight. 22 hours later, Alpha stood in the lobby of her building, jet-lagged and terrified. Marcus met her at the door, his usually jovial face drawn and pale. I didn't know whether to call you or the police, he said. I still don't know if I made the right choice, but Sienna begged me not to involve anyone else until you got here. Marcus, you're scaring me. Come upstairs, please. They rode the elevator in silence. Alpha's mind raced through possibilities. Had Sienna trashed the apartment, invited dangerous people? Was she running some kind of scam? But when Marcus unlocked the door and pushed it open, Alpha's breath caught for an entirely different reason. The apartment was immaculate. More than that, it was lived in, transformed. The stark, minimalist space she'd maintained had become warm, inviting. Baby toys sat neatly in a basket near the couch. Photographs in simple frames lined the mantel, Sienna and Leo, both of them healthier, happier, glowing. The smell of something baking filled the air. "Sienna," Alpha called out. In the kitchen, the voice was bright, cheerful. "I'm just finishing up. Oh my God, you're home." Sienna appeared in the doorway and Alpha almost didn't recognize her. Her hair was clean and styled. She'd gained weight in a healthy way, her cheeks full and pink. She wore simple but clean clothes, jeans, and a soft sweater. She looked like a completely different person. "Alpha, I've been hoping you'd come back. I have so much to tell you. I got a full-time job at the coffee shop and Leo is thriving, and I've been saving money for when you needed the apartment back," and she stopped, seeing Alpha's expression. "What's wrong?" "Where is she?" Alpha whispered. Sienna's face fell. "You should sit down." "Where is she?" Sienna stepped aside, gesturing toward the bedroom, the spare bedroom that Alpha had used for storage. Alpha walked forward as if in a dream. The door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open. And her world stopped. Sitting in a rocking chair by the window, holding baby Leo and singing softly, was Beatrice Vance. Her mother's silver hair was longer, softer. She wore a simple cotton dress instead of her usual tailored suits. Her face was peaceful, content in a way Alpha had never seen. She looked up as Alpha entered and smiled, a warm, genuine smile that Alpha didn't recognize. "Hello," Beatrice said pleasantly. "You must be Sienna's friend. I'm B. Would you like to hold Leo? He just fell asleep and he's such an angel when he's sleeping." The room tilted. Alpha grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. Her mother didn't know her. Her mother was sitting in her apartment, holding a stranger's baby, calling herself B. And she didn't know her own daughter. "Mom," Alpha's voice cracked. "Mom, it's me, it's Alpha." Beatrice's smile faltered slightly, confusion crossing her features. "I'm sorry, dear. Do we know each other? My memory isn't what it used to be. Sienna says I had some kind of medical episode before we met. Did we meet before that?" Alpha's legs gave out. She sank to the floor and Sienna was there immediately, catching her, helping her to the bed. "I tried to call you," Sienna said urgently. "I called the number on your business card 100 times, but it just went to voicemail. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know if I should call the police, but she was so scared when I found her and—" "Found her?" Alpha's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "What do you mean, found her?" Sienna glanced at Beatrice, who had gone back to gently rocking Leo, humming a lullaby. She lowered her voice. "It was the first week I was here. I took Leo to the park, Riverside Park, just down the street. There was a woman sitting on a bench crying. Her clothes were dirty, she was confused, disoriented. People were walking past her like she was invisible. I sat with her, tried to help her figure out where she was supposed to be, but she couldn't tell me her name. Couldn't tell me where she lived. She kept saying she needed to find her daughter, but she couldn't remember her daughter's name." Alpha's chest constricted. No, this can't." She had a medical bracelet on. No name, just diabetic emergency contact with a phone number. But when I called it, the number was disconnected. I didn't know what to do. She was so vulnerable, Alpha. And I thought about how you helped me when I had nothing, when I was invisible to everyone. So I brought her here. I told her this was her home now, that she was safe. That was 6 months ago. Alpha couldn't breathe. She's been here for 6 months. I took her to the emergency room that first week. They did scans, tests. The doctor said she'd had a mini stroke, maybe weeks before I found her. It caused retrograde amnesia. She lost decades of memories. They couldn't tell me who she was. No ID, no fingerprints in the system, no missing persons match. I couldn't afford to keep taking her to doctors and she seemed happy here, so I just took care of her." Alpha looked at her mother, this woman who had controlled every aspect of her life, who had built an empire on precision and power and iron will. Now she sat rocking a baby that wasn't hers, wearing a simple dress, calling herself B, with no memory of who she'd been. She talks about her daughter sometimes, Sienna continued softly. In fragments, she says she was too hard on her, that she made mistakes, that she wished she could tell her she was proud of her, but she can't remember the daughter's name or face. It breaks my heart every time. Beatrice looked up suddenly, her gaze landing on Altha. For a moment, just a flicker, something passed behind her eyes. Recognition, fear, hope. You have kind eyes, she said to Altha. Has anyone ever told you that? You remind me of someone, but I can't quite. She trailed off, frustrated. Altha stood on trembling legs and crossed to her mother. She knelt beside the rocking chair, taking her mother's hand. That hand that had slapped her 6 months ago, that had signed 1,000 business contracts, that had never quite learned how to offer comfort. I'm here now, Mom, she whispered. I'm here and I'm not leaving again. Beatrice squeezed her hand, puzzled but gentle. That's nice, dear, but I'm afraid you have me confused with someone else. My daughter, she paused, tears suddenly filling her eyes. My daughter must be very angry with me. I did something terrible, I think. I can feel it, but I can't remember what. And Altha understood with devastating clarity that this was her punishment and her gift. Her mother was alive, safe, but the woman who had raised her, tormented her, shaped her. That woman was gone, and in her place was someone softer, someone broken, someone who needed the very care and patience that Altha had never received. She's not angry, Altha said, tears streaming down her face. She's just glad you're alive. She's been looking for you everywhere. Beatrice smiled that strange, sweet smile. That's good. I hope she finds me someday. I have so much to tell her. Behind them, Sienna wiped her own tears and quietly left the room, giving them space. This daughter and mother who had found each other in the most impossible way, connected by the kindness given to a homeless woman in an airport. The circle was complete. But the journey home had only just begun. The first month was agony. Altha moved back into her apartment, their apartment now, she supposed. Sienna had offered to leave, but Altha wouldn't hear of it. You saved her life, she'd said. This is your home, we'll figure it out together. So they became an unlikely household, a driven CEO trying to rebuild a relationship with a mother who didn't remember her, a young woman who'd lost everything and found salvation in kindness, a baby who smiled at everyone and kept them all tethered to something pure. And Beatrice, or B, as she preferred, who moved through the world with a lightness Altha had never witnessed. The doctors had confirmed Sienna's diagnosis. Mini stroke causing significant retrograde amnesia. Some memories might return, some might be lost forever. There was no way to predict which. The brain is remarkably plastic, Dr. Ramirez explained during their consultation. Sometimes a trigger, a smell, a photograph, a piece of music can unlock entire sections of memory, but you need to be patient. Forcing it can actually cause more damage. So Altha tried to be patient. She showed her mother photographs, business events, family holidays, the penthouse where Beatrice had lived. The older woman would study them politely, kindly, and shake her head. I'm sorry, dear, I don't remember any of this. Was I happy in these pictures? I look very serious. You were driven, Altha would say carefully. You built an empire. You were one of the most powerful businesswomen in New York. Beatrice would laugh, actually laugh, something Altha couldn't remember hearing before. Me? That sounds exhausting. I much prefer this. She'd gesture around the apartment at the simple life they'd built. Taking care of Leo, helping Sienna with dinner, watching the sunset from the window. This feels right. It broke Altha's heart 1,000 different ways. But slowly, surprisingly, something else began to happen. They built a new relationship. Without the weight of their history, without the battles and resentments and decades of control and rebellion, they could simply be. Beatrice, B, would ask Altha about her day, genuinely interested in the answer. They'd have dinner together, all four of them around the small table, and B would tell funny stories about things she and Leo had done that day. He tried to eat a plant, she'd say, eyes twinkling. Just grabbed a whole handful of my philodendron and shoved it in his mouth. Sienna was horrified, but he looked so proud of himself. And Altha would laugh, actually laugh, something she'd rarely done in her mother's presence before. Sienna watched it all with quiet understanding. She'd enrolled in online classes, working toward a business degree. "You inspired me," she told Altha one evening while they washed dishes. "When you gave me that key, you gave me more than a place to live. You showed me that people can change their entire story in a single moment of courage." "I think you did that yourself," Altha replied. "I just provided the space. And I'm trying to provide the same for your mother. I know how much you want her to remember, but Altha, have you considered that maybe this version of her is also worth knowing?" The question haunted Altha. 3 months after her return, Altha made a decision. She stepped down as CEO of Vance Holdings. The board was shocked. David Chen tried to talk her out of it. "You're at the peak of your career. The Tokyo deal alone set us up for the next decade. You can't just walk away." "Watch me," Altha said. She installed a new CEO, restructured her role to advisory board member, and reduced her hours to 20 a week. The rest of her time she spent at home. She taught Sienna about business strategy. She played with Leo. She took long walks with her mother through Riverside Park, the same park where Sienna had found her. "Tell me about my daughter," Bea would say sometimes. "What was she like?" And Altha would answer honestly. She was scared. She spent her whole life trying to prove she was enough. She made mistakes, but she loved you even when she couldn't show it. "Does she still love me, even though I can't remember her?" "Yes," Altha would whisper. "She loves you more than you know." One afternoon in late January, almost a year after the argument that had broken everything, Altha found her mother sitting at the kitchen table holding an old photograph. It was one Altha had left out, the two of them at Altha's college graduation. Young Altha in her cap and gown, Beatrice beside her, neither of them smiling. "I found this in the drawer," Bea said softly. "Is this you?" Altha's heart raced. "Yes." "You look sad. We both look sad. We were complicated." Bea traced the photograph with one finger. "Did I make you sad?" The question hung in the air. Altha could have lied, could have softened it, but this woman, this new version of her mother, deserved honesty. "Sometimes. But I made you sad too. We hurt each other because we didn't know how to love each other the right way." Bea looked up, tears in her eyes. "I don't want to hurt you now." "You're not. You're teaching me something I never learned before, how to just be, without all the pressure and expectations." "Will you tell me something, the truth?" "Anything." "Are you my daughter?" The world stopped. Altha had been so careful, never pushing, never demanding. The doctors said triggers had to be organic, natural. But now, looking into her mother's eyes, she saw something new, not certainty but hope. "Yes," she whispered, "I'm your daughter." Bea nodded slowly as if confirming something she'd suspected. "I thought so. You have my hands and my stubbornness," she smiled. "I may not remember everything, but I know that I love you. I can feel it. Is that strange?" Altha couldn't speak. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face. "The last thing I remember before everything went dark is a fight. A terrible fight with someone I loved, and words I couldn't take back." Bea's voice shook. "Was that you?" "Yes." "Did I hurt you?" "We hurt each other." "I'm so sorry," Bea whispered. "I may not remember the details, but I remember the feeling, the regret, the shame. Will you forgive me?" Altha knelt beside her mother's chair and took both her hands. "If you'll forgive me." And Beatrice Vance, Bea, pulled her daughter into an embrace neither of them could remember sharing before. They held each other and cried, mourning the lost years and celebrating the impossible second chance. The memories came back slowly over the next months. Not all of them, not even most of them, but fragments. Altha as a child learning to ride a bike, a vacation to Cape Cod when Altha was 12, the day Altha's father died and how they'd held each other in the hospital hallway. The business memories never fully returned. Beatrice had no interest in reclaiming them. "That woman sounds exhausting," she'd say with a laugh. "I like this life better." And slowly, Altha realized she did too. Sienna graduated with her business degree and took a position as operations manager at Vance Holdings, a role Altha created specifically for her. "You understand people in ways most executives never will," Altha told her. "The company needs that." Leo grew into a toddler who called Altha Aunt Atha and climbed into Bea's lap for stories every night. They became a family, not the family any of them had planned, not the family anyone would have predicted, but a family nonetheless, built on the foundation of a single act of desperate kindness in an airport terminal. 1 year after Altha's return, they gathered for dinner in the apartment that had witnessed so much transformation. Sienna had cooked. Leo banged cheerfully on his high chair tray, beset the table with care, humming softly. And Altha looked around at these people, her mother, her friend, the child who'd been present for it all, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. "Peace. I have an announcement," she said as they settled around the table. "I'm officially making Sienna a partner in the company, 20% equity stake. She's earned it." Sienna gasped. "Altha, I can't, that's worth millions." "You gave me something worth more than millions. You gave me my mother back. You showed me what real compassion looks like. You built a home from nothing." Altha's voice caught. "You gave when you had nothing to give. Now I'm giving back." They toasted with sparkling cider. Leo insisted on clinking his sippy cup with everyone, and laughed, and talked late into the evening. Later, after Sienna had put Leo to bed and retreated to her room, Altha sat with her mother on the couch, watching the city lights through the window. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" Bea asked quietly. "Before?" Altha thought about it carefully. "I wish we'd fought less. I wish I'd been braver about telling you what I needed. I wish you'd been softer sometimes." She paused. "But if things had been different, maybe we wouldn't have ended up here. Maybe I wouldn't have been in that airport. Maybe I wouldn't have met Sienna. Maybe you wouldn't have gotten your second chance to just be happy." "Do you think we get the lives we're meant to have, or do we create them?" "I think we get both," Altha said. "I think we're given circumstances and then we choose what to do with them. You and I, we had one life together. It wasn't perfect. It hurt sometimes, but it led us here. And this is the life we're choosing now." Bea leaned her head on her daughter's shoulder, a gesture the old Beatrice would never have made. "I choose this," she whispered. "Every day. I choose this." "Me too, Mom, me too." Outside, the city hummed with a million stories, people finding each other, losing each other, choosing each other. And in a small apartment overlooking Riverside Park, 3 women and a baby proved that family wasn't just blood or duty. It was love, it was patience, it was showing up for each other, especially when life broke you into pieces and forced you to rebuild. It was giving your key to a stranger in your darkest moment, and trusting that somehow, impossibly, it would lead you home. What would you have done in Altha's shoes, standing in that airport, drowning in guilt and grief, watching a homeless mother struggle with a hungry baby? Would you have walked past? Would you have given some spare change? Or would you have done the unthinkable and handed over your entire apartment, trusting a complete stranger in your moment of deepest desperation? This story hits different because we've all been there. Not in the exact same situation, but in that moment where you have to choose between protecting what's yours and opening your heart to someone else's pain. We live in a world that teaches us to guard our resources, to be suspicious, to protect ourselves first. But Altha's story reminds us that sometimes the most reckless act of kindness becomes the miracle we needed all along. Think about what she lost and what she found. She lost the mother she knew, that controlled, rigid woman who'd shaped her entire life. But she found something she'd never had, a real relationship built on love instead of obligation. She found a sister in Sienna. She found purpose beyond profit. She found herself. And it all started with a key. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you that compassion can come back to us in the most unexpected ways, if it gave you hope that broken families can heal, if it made you believe that one moment of courage can change everything, then I need you to do something for me right now. Smash that like button if you believe kindness is never wasted, even when you can't see the results right away. Drop a comment below telling me, second chances matter. Let me know if you've ever given or received an unexpected kindness that changed your life. I read every single comment, and your stories inspire the content I create. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I'm bringing you more real stories like this every week. Stories about ordinary people making extraordinary choices, about families healing against impossible odds, about the power of showing up when it matters most. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We all know someone who's struggling right now, someone who's lost hope, someone who needs to believe that things can get better. This story might be exactly what they need to hear today. We're building a community here, people who believe that even when life breaks us, we can choose to break open instead of break down. People who understand that the help we give others often becomes the help we need ourselves. People who know that family isn't just who you're born to, it's who shows up when everything falls apart. You're not alone in believing these things matter. Join us. Be part of this movement toward more compassion, more courage, more second chances. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Because Altha's story isn't just about her. It's about all of us and the keys we give away and the miracles waiting on the other side of our fear. Let's change the world, one story at a time. See you in the next video.